Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynic Alex, and today I want to give you my summary review of the two new uniforms for Cyclops and Wolverine. I picked them up tonight on the live stream. I spent quite a bit of time testing them out, doing some damage number checks to give you my opinion on whether or not I think they're worth the cost in crystals from an efficient standpoint of view. Are they functionally going to make your characters, Wolverine and Cyclops, stronger than either their base uniform, which is none, or their other uniform, because both of these characters have other looks. Additionally, we can talk about the way that the uniforms actually look in the game, and then some other discussions of the stats that the uniform provide as base additions to the characters, which are located in the uniform kind of page here with the bonus. A lot of people have been speculating about whether these uniforms are worthwhile or not, and a lot of people are much more careful with their crystals nowadays, with so many new things costing more crystals than ever, like uniforms, Black Panthers, and characters like Emma Frost. So I understand the hesitation from the players to get these uniforms. My summary for both is I think neither of them are actually worth it from a functional point of view. I think neither of these uniforms make the character even 20% better than they are with their other uniform or even with their base model. I honestly don't think that Cyclops is actually, that's not Cyclops, I honestly don't think that Cyclops is 20% better with this uniform as opposed to his base modeled uniform. Frankly, one of the biggest reasons why you would get this uniform is because it changes him into a villain, which is such a polarizing, in a good way, thing for something like Shadowland. It makes him super versatile because we don't have as many villains as heroes, and it allows you to basically cover any stage, especially because he's a blast type. To have that kind of versatility is fantastic, and this changes him back to a hero, so he loses one of the biggest parts of his uniform. On the other hand, we have Wolverine, and while this uniform does look the best aside from his base kit, this one is definitely by far his most iconic look. Unfortunately, it's the look that we never see anymore because everyone wants the bonus stats from a uniform, so everyone sees this, and we're going to see some of this. But again, it's really not that good, and although it changes his third skill and fifth skill, I ran the tests with damage numbers, and it's really not impressive. There's really not much. The increase is probably less than 20% just on the damage alone. So would you really buy a uniform if you're not even getting a 20% damage boost from no uniform to the uniform? Probably not. So going back and discussing in depth and in detail Cyclops' uniform, what are you really getting out of it? Well, there's essentially two changes to the uniform. The bonus stats are the big change, and then the other change is to his skill. He has one skill change, his fourth skill, Optic Blast. With his base kit, his Optic Blast is pretty bad. It's just one kind of big spray effect, and it hits once, and it does kind of mediocre damage. His uniform, his Age of Apocalypse uniform, really changed his fourth skill and made it so much better. It's got multiple hits, it's got residual damage because he kind of burns the lasers into the ground, so they're coming up out of the ground, kind of like lava, laser lava, and it does good damage, and it's AoE, so it basically gave Cyclops everything he needed in his fourth skill. The new fourth skill is kind of the same. It's a fast animation, it has multiple hits, and it's an AoE. It also moves Cyclops around, so despite the fact that it's not listed as an iframe, it pretty much is an iframe. He moves so fast that you would only take damage if someone was targeting you with a beam skill, like Thanos' laser, or if there was some sort of large AoE effect going on that was already hitting you anyways, like Thanos' tornado, a meteor coming down from Ebony Maw, or something like that. So it's kind of an iframe. However, I did some tests with this uniform and with his other uniform. Keep in mind that there isn't a totally fair comparison going on here, because this uniform only gives me 15% all attack and no other bonuses. Well, one other bonus, we'll get to that. Whereas this uniform gives me 16%, so just 1% more all attack, but it also gives me an additional 204 base energy attack. So for reference, with this uniform I have just over 20,000 energy attack, but when I equip his other uniform that I have, I go up to 20,700. So it's a difference of about 600 energy attack, which might not seem like a lot, but it could be. And then you also have to take into consideration that with his new uniform, it enhances his leadership. his leadership gets bumped up from 25% all attack to 35%. So with this uniform or with no uniform, he gets 25% all attack, 25% all defense from natural born leader. With his newest uniform, however, that goes up to 35% all attack. Now this seems like a pretty strange change. Why didn't they change the all defense so the numbers would match? Well, essentially they did this for Extreme Alliance Battle to try to sucker, I think, some players into purchasing this, thinking that they need it to keep up with the Blast Mail meta team, which is either Ancient One, Cable, and Coulson, or Cyclops, Cable, and Coulson. However, you can stick with Ancient One. You can even go and stick with Star-Lord. You don't need this one at all for that reason. So even with the additional 10% all attack, even with only 600 more energy attack, his fourth skill was pretty sad. The numbers I have here, with his old uniform, he was ticking for over 100,000 damage just with the fourth skill against Infinity Thanos with his leadership and no other help. I did this test multiple times. I ran it about 5 to 7 times, then I aggregated the results. Of course, more results, 10, 20, 30, 40 samples would give you a more accurate number, but we don't need a super accurate number. We just need to know if it's the same damage, more damage, or less damage. So we need like a rough estimate, okay? With his new uniform, this kind of fidget spinner Marvel Now, he's only doing about 60,000 damage with his fourth skill. That's really sad. So his damage actually goes down when you change uniforms. Now, part of that could be left up to the difference in energy attack. It is 600 damage, or 600 points different, but it's not enough to double or half the damage. He's really not going to make up that much of the difference, especially because when I tested out the speed at which Cyclops could get Infinity Thanos out of his first phase, which he does it at about 1.1 million damage taken. So he starts off at, I think, 3.6 million health. Once you get him down to about 2,500,000, he retreats to the center of the field and he charges up for his second phase. It took me about 35 seconds with this uniform. It took me about 25 to 30 seconds with this uniform. So it is faster. He's doing more damage for sure. I can't deny that overall because of the uniform bonuses, but it's definitely not enough for the damage to be half on his fourth skill. So for any reason, if you were going to purchase this uniform for the fourth skill, just know it's actually worse. So you're basically purchasing it for the look at this point, or for the 10% boost to the leadership, which personally I don't think is worth it. Aesthetically, it's a very attractive uniform. I have to say that. I have to give Netmarble props for that. They're very good at making bright, interesting, cool looking uniforms that are still faithful to the comics. But honestly, for the average purchaser, for the person who's saving up their Stark stashes month after month and budgeting for crystal purchases, this is definitely a luxury and not a need by any means. Moving over to Wolverine, we have a similar situation. While the uniform might look good to a lot of people, and especially looks good in comparison to good old One Hand, a lot of people hate the way this uniform looks, but you're gonna have to accept, or hate to accept, but still accept, the fact that this uniform is by far better than this uniform. I think it's unequivocal at this point that this uniform is outperformed by his Age of Apocalypse, both offensively and, say it with me now, defensively. And it's kind of sad that Netmarble couldn't do more for Wolverine. He's a beloved character. He's my favorite, so you should have done him better. And frankly, why are they trying to sell this uniform if they're not even going to put the effort in to make it good? Make it as good, if not better, than Age of Apocalypse. But don't make it worse. Why would you make it worse? It's already super expensive to rank up because of the fact that you need to use Phoenix Feathers. So it's really confusing to me, but what do you get? Well, the uniform bonus is probably worse. It's 10% ignore defense, which you frankly don't need. Because Wolverine has a uniform, obviously, you can get ignore defense from his uniform upgrade option, from the optional stats. So it really covers you wherever you need it. You can also get it on Uru, you can get it on ISO 8 sets, you can get it on the Obelisk. You're really not limited, so it's a very useless stat to have. I made fun of it when they gave Gamora 30% ignore defense on her newest uniform, and it rings true for Wolverine as well. Keep in mind that this 10% ignore defense is also replacing the Age of Apocalypse uniform bonus, which was 15% damage decreased. This is an amazing uniform bonus, and this makes him so much harder to kill. Why did whichever dev chose to make this uniform decide that this was going to be a better uniform option. It's almost like they don't play their own game. This is far and away a much worse uniform bonus. They declawed him basically with this change. It's really sad. This is garbage. I can't express how bad that uniform bonus is compared to the 15% damage received decrease. It's not even a comparison. In addition, it claims that Wolverine has 2 skills changed. In essence, he really only has 1 skill changed, because Berserker Rage is exactly the same with this uniform as it is with this uniform. It's only different when compared to his base 5th skill, and it's that additional landing attack where he stuns the enemy that is different. So if you have Age of Apocalypse already, there's only 1 skill that changes, and it's the Omega Cannon, his 3rd skill. Sadly, X Slash, while it might look cooler because it's not an Omega Blast, it's not a Hadouken, actually does poor damage, and it's actually even worse than his base attack 3rd skill, which I like the animation of, frankly, but that's besides the point. Because my Age of Apocalypse uniform is so beefed out and tanky, you know, I have 25% all attack, I have multiple physical attack, or I have a physical attack roll at the highest possible number, or almost the highest possible number. What is it, 602 out of 606? Anyways, my Wolverine is way too juiced out to compare and compete with this Wolverine. So I actually ran the numbers with Wolverine's uniform, the all-new Marvel Now, versus no uniform. So keep that in mind. With no uniform, or with his uniform, sorry, he's rocking 23,200 physical attack. With no uniform, he's rocking 21,400. So that's a drop of almost 2,000 physical damage. And here are the numbers. His 3rd skill actually hits for about 10,000 damage less than his no uniform skill. So by equipping this uniform, you're actually losing damage on the 3rd skill. Great skill change, Netmarble. Fantastic. I have no doubt that this skill, Omega Beam, would be doing way more than 120,000. So it's double what his 3rd skill does without, or with this new uniform, which is pretty sad. In addition, his 5th skill only does about 20 to 30,000 damage more with this uniform equipped. Now, that is kind of more in line with what you'd expect, but additionally, you have to keep in mind that the uniform adds an additional hit. So that additional hit could be the entirety of that damage. So there's really not much to say as far as this uniform goes. I have honestly no idea why they made it so bad. It feels rushed in my opinion. While again, it looks good, and you can even see the shadow of Wolverine's hand and his claw when he unsheaths it, which I think is a great touch. The rest of the uniform is just completely lacking any kind of effort or logical explanation. They made him weaker, and they gave his uniform bonus a huge nerf, which also makes him weaker. He's weaker offensively, and he's weaker defensively. So either they're trying to nerf Wolverine silently, or they have no idea how to create uniforms for their game to be balanced and to make sense. So I'm quite disappointed the more I talk about it with Wolverine, especially because he's my kind of, you know, one true love. But it is what it is. I can at least impart on you guys the information that you should save your crystals and completely pass on this uniform until they buff it, or until they make another uniform for Wolverine that's better. And you'll be sure that if it's not, I'll tell you when it comes out. Let me know what you guys think of this assessment of the 2 uniforms. Let me know what you'd like to see next in the comments below. Subscribe if you enjoyed the content and you want to support me. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.